Hey everybody, Phil801 here with another philosophy video. This time we're going to talk about the philosophy of a 3-month supply, or rather how a 3-month supply is supposed to work and should work, which is different than a lot of people seem to understand what it is. A lot of things that I hear are, how do I rotate my 3-month supply? How am I supposed to get a 3-month supply? If you don't know about 3-month supply, generally recommended for food storage is 1 year of long-term type food and a 3-month supply. Well, what's your 3-month supply? Well, in Phil801 philosophy, your 3-month supply is your own personal grocery store. Let me explain that a little bit. So I scribbled down some notes here to make sure that I covered everything. Your 3-month supply is meant to be things that you eat regularly. If you weren't storing food, what would you eat? Well, if you're like most of America, you would eat out. You would go to fast food. You would at 5 o'clock be scrambling to figure out what you're going to make. Most households that I know of, at least, they don't sit down and plan out a meal, or they don't sit down and plan out a schedule of meals. They don't have a lot of planning involved. They might scribble out some things for a shopping list. Some of you may be really well organized, and that's great. Most of the people I know, though, they're not. They just go buy their favorite things at the grocery store. They might, make a list of a few meals they're going to have, but they don't sit down and actually calendar out what they're going to have. But your 3-month supply should be things that you and your family are going to eat regardless. Whether you're running to the store on the way home, or whether you're picking something up, whatever. It's going to be things that you would normally eat. Now, there's some caveats there. It's not just things you normally eat, but it's things that you normally eat that can be stored properly, with its own caveat. What you want to do is you want to be able to either pre-make and freeze your meals, or you want to have all the ingredients on hand in dry goods or canned goods. And then if you have fresh stuff that you need to go in it, for example, milk, if you don't want to use powdered milk. Another example is vegetables. You want to be able to use fresh vegetables and fruit as well. So in this philosophy, what you're going to do is, for things that require fresh stuff like that, you're going to buy all the ingredients minus the fresh things. You're going to store all of your meals pre-done or pre-set up. So the concept here is that your 3-month supply becomes your grocery store. Your grocery store becomes your warehouse. This is actually a really fun mentality once you get going, and I absolutely love it. It is really cool to have a stocked storeroom that not only has your full 1-year supply, and we'll go over those in a whole other series of videos, but it also has your 3-month supply. And whenever you need something or need a meal, you know you have it in your 3-month supply. And what I recommend doing, well, what we do here is we have a storage room downstairs, and we have several freezers out in our garage. And that is where we store our 3-month supply. Now, every week, what we'll do is we'll bring in or bring up a week's worth of meals. And it may be every half week, it depends, sometimes it may be more than that. But our pantry is where we prepare food from. And so our pantry is our on-hand stock. Our storage room and freezers is our grocery store. And we consider the grocery store to be a warehouse. If we don't have something in our stuff, we have to run to the warehouse to get it. And therefore, when we go to the warehouse, usually we don't go to the warehouse or to the grocery store to buy just one thing, or to buy just one thing of one thing. We may go to get one thing, but we get a whole case of it, because if we're low enough to need to go to the grocery store, then we're low on stock, and what we'll do is we'll pick up a whole case of, say, canned corn or something to that effect. The trick is to figure out your meals ahead of time. What you want to do is you and your partner, your spouse, whatever, you want to sit down and you want to figure out 14 meals. And I'm specifically talking about dinners here. You want to plan out 14 meals that you and your family already eat on a fairly regular basis. Here's some examples. These are some of the things that we keep in ours. Chicken casserole, lasagna, enchiladas, other casseroles, I can't think of any others offhand. Taco salad is another. And these are dinner meals that our family likes, that we eat on a regular basis. So once you have your 14 meals, the next thing you do is you take each one of those meals and you break out the ingredients. And this part takes a little bit of planning and a little bit of time, but you only have to do it once. So you're going to identify your 14 meals. And when you're selecting these, you want to identify things that are more geared towards being stored. For example, steak probably isn't a good one. So the examples I gave, those are good ones. Those, the primary ingredients and the entire dish in some cases can be stored either in the freezer or down in storage. All the ingredients can be stored down in storage. Once you've got your 14 meals, then you want to take each meal and you want to make a separate list, and on that list you want to identify, and this is for one meal, so one meal of that dish, for example lasagna. Lasagna requires noodles, it requires ground beef, depending on how you're making it. It requires ricotta cheese, it requires cheddar cheese, it requires tomato sauce. So you're going to write down each one of these things and the amount that you need for a single lasagna. Once you've done that, you do it for every one of the meals. And what you're making on this list is a shopping list. So you want to say, if say ground beef came up, you may say 5 pounds here for your lasagna, or that's probably a pound, a single pound for a lasagna. So you may say 1 pound here, and then you may get to another meal that requires 2 pounds of hamburger. So you're going to come back over here and you're going to put 2 more tick marks, and you're going to say, okay, we need 3 pounds of hamburger. And then you're going to go through each one of these meals and you're going to aggregate or add on to that list. So by the time you're done, it might say 25 pounds of hamburger and 3 bottles of spaghetti sauce or something like that. And what that represents is all of the ingredients that you need to have to make those 14 meals. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to take those numbers and you're going to multiply them by 6. And here's why. You've got 2 weeks worth of dishes. Because you have 14 dishes, you have 2 weeks worth. And there are 6 2-week blocks in 3 months. So you're going to take those numbers for 2 weeks worth of food and you're going to times them by 6, and now what you have is a list of ingredients that you need to buy to have 3 months worth of dinner meals. So now what you're going to do with that, you're going to set that aside and you're going to go to breakfast. And for breakfast you're going to write down things like oatmeal, cereal, muffins, things like that. You're going to identify, and bagels, whatever. You're going to identify the different breakfasts that you're going to have. But you don't need 14. We're a lot more redundant with our breakfast. We eat the same thing a lot more frequently. So it might be, 8 different kinds of cold cereal that we're going to get, or whatever it is your family eats. You want to identify, okay, we're going to eat cereal in 2 weeks. We will eat cereal 5 times. And we'll eat bagels twice, and we'll eat oatmeal 3 times, or whatever it is for your family. But what you want to do is you want to identify 2 weeks worth of breakfast. And then you do the same thing. You break it out into a list. These are the ingredients we need. And then you multiply those ingredients by 6. For lunches, you can do a couple things. And I'm going to say, generally speaking, for lunches, you're going to use sandwiches. You may want to do a bunch of other things, but and if you do, then you're going to apply the same principle that we did for breakfast. But there's two things that I want to talk about with lunch, and that is, if you're doing sandwiches, I want to talk about bread. And if I'm going to talk about bread, I'm also going to talk about cheese, because one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that you can buy 20 pounds worth of cheese and come home and grate it in a food mixer, and you end up with 20 pounds of shredded cheese. Well, that shredded cheese actually freezes very well. And so what we do is we'll go out and we'll buy, now remember, I have 8 kids, so we'll go out and we'll buy 20 or 30 pounds of cheese, and we shred all of it, and we put it all into gallon bags. And those gallon bags go into the freezer, and it freezes just fine. When we take it out of the freezer, it takes about a day to thaw, and we just put it in the fridge and it thaws out, and it's a little moist, but most cheese that you use, especially shredded cheese, you melt, and so it doesn't matter. But cheese, it's perfect after it's been frozen. It's just fine. So you can freeze cheese. The other thing with bread is that you can buy multiple loaves of bread and you can throw them in the freezer, and they again take about a day to thaw out. We'll take a loaf of bread out of the freezer, put it in the pantry, and the next day it's thawed out, and it's as good as new. So the other thing you can do with bread, and this is great because it practices for using your long-term food storage, is you can make your own bread. And this does 2 primary things. Number 1, if you make your own bread on a regular basis, then you are developing and maintaining a skill that will be beneficial to you in a long-term survival situation. It's great to have, I have probably 2,000 pounds of wheat. Well, that's fantastic, but how do I use it? And so using that on a regular basis to make bread, our family knows very well how to make wheat bread. And so by making your bread for your lunches, you're practicing and being familiar with and making sure that you have all the tools and everything you need to make bread, which you would need to do in a long-term situation. The second thing that it does is that in a long-term survival situation, if you aren't accustomed to eating wheat, your body will freak out a bit when you switch to eating wheat on a regular basis. And so nutritionists that I've seen advise to kind of break in eating whole wheat bread. Don't eat it every single day at first, give it a day or 2 in between, let your body adjust, because wheat is a little different for digestion. I'm not a nutritionist, I don't know or understand or care what all the specifics are. What I know is that you have to build up a bit of a tolerance, or your body has to build up a bit of a habitual process to be able to eat wheat on a regular basis. The problem with that is that if you switch to your long-term storage suddenly, and all of a sudden you're eating whole wheat bread a couple times a day, then your body's going to give you some problems. So this keeps you prepared for long-term survival if you're making your own bread in a couple of ways. So for lunches, you can either freeze the bread, or you can make the bread, or you can do a combination, and you can just kind of figure out what you're going to do. So for lunches on this, again, 14 days worth, and you want to, when you're doing this, you're adjusting your meals. Obviously we make probably bigger lasagnas than other people do, or we, when we sit our family down for a meal, we consume a lot more food than a lot of people do. So you got to take all that into consideration. The next thing is, once you've got these meals all planned out, now you've got this master list, and I recommend doing this in Excel. My preference is Excel, and I like to have it there to where I can tweak it as we go, and it makes it real easy, and I can print it out every couple months when we actually go to the grocery store and stock up. But what you want to do is have a big shopping day. You're going to put all this in Excel or something, and you're going to have everything printed off, and you're going to know exactly what you need to buy. And so you have a big shopping day, and you go and you buy 3 months worth of food. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, I can't afford to do that. Well, here's the thing. You actually end up saving money by doing it this way, because you are buying in more bulk, you are buying very specific types and amounts of food instead of just going and randomly buying some stuff. So you're buying very targeted food, and you actually, in the long term, I promise you, you end up saving money. What you need to do is, if you can't afford to just go out and do this, do it 1 month at a time. Take your regular food money and maybe go lean for a couple weeks and save up that money, and then go out and do it for 1 month at a time and save up your food money during that month, and at the end of that month, go out and buy 6 weeks worth, and so on, and gradually work your way into it. But you can change your family to this system immediately, and you can do it by having some kind of a staggered approach to it. You don't have to go buy 3 months exactly all at once. So what you're going to do is you're going to go buy all this food, and when you get home, you have to plan this. When you get home, you want to buy your food probably around a weekend, because when you get home, you need to have a cooking day. And guys, don't make your wives do all this cooking, because it's tough. It's a lot of work. It pays off because it makes it really easy to get dinners ready. But be a man and stand up and help your wife, and help get the food ready, because there's a lot involved. There's a lot of processing, there's a lot of cutting food up, there's a lot of mixing, there's a lot of getting things ready. And you can be very helpful to your wife and bring your kids in and have them working on stuff, and it's a great family activity. That's how we do it, at least. So on baking day, which we'll do on a Saturday and we'll carry on to Sunday as needed, but on baking day, our whole family's involved. We've got all the materials there, and we'll have every burner on the stove going, we'll have the oven going, we'll have, everything's going everywhere. And my wife is actually more refereeing and telling us all what we need to do as she's working through all these lists of different things we need to make. So we're going to make, say, 6 lasagnas. And so somebody's on, or a couple kids are on lasagnas, and that's what they're doing. First we have to brown the beef. So we're browning hamburger, and then we're getting it over here, and this is all the stuff my wife coordinates. She'll set someone to doing this and doing that. And as you get the beef browned, then you move it over, and you've got a station where they're assembling the lasagna. And in another station, you may have somebody putting together chicken casserole, and that chicken may have to be cooked, and then that chicken will have to be cut up, or depending on what you're doing, if it's a whole breast, or it depends on what you're doing. So you cut up that chicken, and then you assemble the casserole. And what you want to do is, some of these will have to be pre-cooked, but lots of them don't, like the lasagna. It doesn't need to be pre-cooked. You make the lasagna in a dish, and then you go and put it in a freezer. Now, speaking of the dishes, you may need to consider at the outset here the need to purchase more dishes than you have. What you don't want to do is strip your cupboards of all your dishes. So you may need to buy either disposable, or you can go to Goodwill or Salvation Army, and you can buy used dishes, will work just fine. Go get a bunch of 13x9 pans, or go get a bunch of this or that. And then you want to make all your food in these dishes, and like the lasagnas, you're going to not pre-cook them, but you're going to put them in the freezer raw, pre-assembled, pre-made, and you set them in your freezer. Now, we have 2 big deep freezers, and that, in considering all this, that may be something else you need to take into consideration. You can certainly start without it, especially if you're doing a pared down plan, but you want to put that on your list of things that you're saving up for, you want to get a nice deep freezer. And you can get a decent sized one for $150, $175. Once you get it, they're fantastic because you can store so much stuff in them. So at this point we've got 6 lasagnas being made, we've got 6 chicken casseroles being made, and a whole bunch of other things. And on baking day, we get all this stuff put together. Now, not all your dishes are going to require the full pre-assembly like that. The lasagna, we could freeze the hamburger, we could store the noodles, store the cheese by freezing it. You know, we could store it in components. Lasagna, when we do this, we happen to prefer putting the lasagna in a 13x9 pan in the freezer and storing it that way, because then all we have to do is bring it in and we can put it straight in the freezer, or we put it straight in the stove, or we put it in the freezer and we let it thaw out the day before. So, you know, if we're having lasagna the next day, we'll bring it in and we'll let it thaw out. Some of these will be in component pieces and won't need any pre-assembly at all. And so you just put them up on the shelves. And on the days when you're eating that meal, then you'll need to go and pull the supplies. Well, every 2 weeks you're going to pull supplies and you're going to put them in your pantry. And when it's time to make those dishes, then it's going to take more prep work that day to get the dish put together. Now, as far as fresh food goes, for example, taco salad is one of ours that we like to do this with. So with taco salad, we'll brown our beef and we'll put it in a bag and we'll label it that it's for taco salad. I think my wife puts cheese in there as well. I'm sorry, somehow I'll probably get out the list of food that we use and stuff, but you know, it needs to be what your family likes. But my wife will get a baggie ready for taco salad, and it'll say on it that we need to have lettuce, we need to have this or that, we need fresh tomatoes. So the key is that taco salad is still just fine if we don't have those fresh vegetables. Hopefully we'll have them, and preferably they'll come out of my garden, but for fresh vegetables, sometimes in the winter we're not going to have that, so we're going to go to the grocery store. And what we'll have is every week we go to the grocery store and we buy a small amount of all the fresh produce that we're going to need for that week. And so it's all in the fridge. So you're still making a trip to the grocery store once a week, but it's for very targeted items, and generally when we go, we just go to the produce section and swing by the dairy section and we're done. Now, what you want to do is know every week what it is you've got to buy, but you're only planning for 14 meals. And so it's very easy to say, we're going to have these 7 this week. And then you know what you need to get at the store. So what we'll do is we initially do the 3 months, and then you have a choice. You can every month go and buy a month's worth and replenish the month prior that you did, or you can go and buy 2 months worth and you're starting to extend that out. Now, you don't want to get too far out because that food doesn't all store for long term very well. But what you want to do is you want to keep up that 3-month supply, so you've got 3 months worth of food on hand. And so every month, every 6 weeks or so, you're going to restock your 3-month supply. And in doing this, you are rotating your 3-month supply around because you're eating it on a regular basis. So you want to have, when you store those meals, you want to put the date on them and indicate on them when they were made. And that way when you pull them out, you know you're getting the older ones instead of the fresher ones, and your fresher ones can stay and be used at a later date. So this is how you rotate. You're just cycling through and you're constantly rebuilding it. And what I've actually done is the meals that don't require freezing, I have lots of extras of those meals down in the storage. And so even if we're 6 weeks in, I will still have 3 months worth of meals because I've got about that much or more in extra food that I've bought that are maybe other meals that aren't on our main list, or they're duplications of that meal, and we can still go 3 months just eating off of that. But it is a wonderful thing to not have to worry about going to the store all the time or trying to figure out what you're going to do. It's really nice to have everything all ready to go. I love that my storeroom downstairs is my grocery store. If we need something, we go down there. And for breakfast and lunches, you apply the same principles. They are just a lot more repetitive. So that is the 3-month supply philosophy. Basically, you're identifying 14 dishes, you're multiplying the ingredient, and you're identifying the ingredients, you're multiplying the ingredients of those 14 dishes by 6. That is the amount of food that you're going to buy. And then you're going to have a baking day, and you're going to get this all pre-made and ready to go and put into storage, and you're going to then rotate through that through the 3 months, and every 4 to 6 weeks you're going to repeat. And in doing this, you're able to keep your food constantly cycled, and you always are prepared for a short-term catastrophe as far as having food on hand. And when that runs out, then you're moving into your long-term supply. And in the meantime, though, your family can eat just like normal out of your 3-month supply. Now, this is a personal philosophy of mine. You may want to or do something differently. That's fine. Hopefully, the ideas of how we do it will help you figure out some other ways to do yours. And likewise, I'd love to hear what you're doing. And if you've got some good ideas, feed them to me. I'd love to hear them, and I'd love to find something new that lets me change my stuff and do things better. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this helped you, and I hope it helped you understand 3-month supplies better and how that is able to work. So, if you like these videos and you like the approach I'm taking to things, please subscribe to my channel and please comment. I would love to engage in conversation with you, and let me know what you think about things. Thanks for watching. Appreciate your time. Have a safe day.